Calls to end the Israel-Hamas war and get the remaining hostages out of Gaza growing louder over the weekend. The largest protest to date happening in the streets of Tel Aviv Sunday, putting new pressure on the Israeli government to reach a deal. Fox News correspondent Trey Ying's reporting on the latest from Tel Aviv, Israel.
That's right. It was the largest demonstration since the war began. 500,000 people in the streets of Tel Aviv calling for a deal. There were other gatherings in places like Jerusalem and Haifa demanding that an agreement be reached. But at this point in the war, those demands could remain unmet. American teams are trying another bridging proposal to get Israel and Hamas on the same page. As reports indicate, there are new disagreements about which Palestinian prisoners would be released for the Israeli captives.
We've got to bring them back all home, the hostages, the alive, the ones and the dead ones, because otherwise there is no future to this country. Really can't see it happen.
With the war raging on inside Gaza, Israel is conducting new airstrikes along the Strip, though the more active front remains in northern Israel, where Iran-backed Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets across the border overnight. Daily Israeli counterstrikes have targeted different Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. We're also tracking other developments on Israel's eastern border, where 3 people were killed today when a gunman crossed from Jordan and conducted a terror attack at the Allenby Bridge. Clearly, there are many fronts unfolding at the same time, and this does put pressure on Israeli leadership to reach an agreement to try and de-escalate rising tension across the region. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
Trey, thank you so much. And joining us live this morning to further discuss this breaking news alert, former advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Ruthie Blum. Ruthie, hello. Thank you so much for joining us bright and early this Monday morning.
Thank you for having me, Janae.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. So, Ruthie, a lot to dissect. Calls for a ceasefire growing louder, calls for the remaining hostages to be returned home safely are growing louder as well. We know this isn't the first protest. I've seen several over the past few weekends, 6 October 7th, that happened at now Hostage Square. But this latest protest, we're hearing that it's the biggest one yet. Talk about the camaraderie and the people coming together for one central focus, and that's to get those hostages returned home safely.
Well, the entire state of Israel wants those hostages returned home safely and wants to bring the dead hostages back for burial. There is total unity in society. Where there isn't is the dispute is over how you do that. The trouble is that we're negotiating with a ghost. Hamas is not at the negotiating table, and we have Qatar, Egypt, the United States, and Israel. Israel is agreeing to every deal that the United States has put on the table, and Hamas rejects it. Now, here's the real tragedy. The tragedy is that these slogans about ceasefire and bring them all home, Hamas is not agreeing to free all of the hostages and won't. Even in any deal that Israel agrees to, including stopping the war, letting Hamas win, letting Sinwar stay in power, releasing all bloodthirsty terrorists from Israeli jails, it still doesn't bring all the hostages home. Hamas has said, well, maybe in a first phase, if you agree to a ceasefire and leave Gaza, we'll give you maybe 30 hostages, and we won't tell you which of them are alive or dead. So the tragedy here is that the people who are devastated, the ones directly affected by it, of course, are devastated. But the protesters there's a whole bunch of them who are actually protesting against the current government, and it has really nothing to do with the hostages. But in any case, the world is pressuring Israel rather than Hamas, rather than Qatar, rather than Egypt. This is what's so awful. Israel, it's knocking on an open door, and it is not true that Prime Minister Netanyahu isn't doing everything he can to return them.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ruthie. The protests calling for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Some of those people at that protest asking Netanyahu to do more. You worked with him. You've spoken to him. You had these face-to-face conversations. What more can be done? We know he's spoken to different world leaders. He's asking for more aid. I know there are even calls for that post-war plan. Put that into perspective for us, please.
Well, look, let me give you an example of for earlier on during the war. There was a big dispute in the Israeli public about whether to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. All right, the fact that the UN then said we were going to try to starve the Palestinians, of course, that's nonsense. But the reason was that we were trying to find leverage. I'm not talking about the Israeli government now, I'm talking about the people in Israel who believed that the only way to get Hamas to agree to anything was to exert military pressure on the one hand and other kinds of leverage. And one of those was not to allow humanitarian goods in there because Hamas was stealing them and selling them at exorbitant prices to Palestinian civilians, for example. The other issue was that the hostages were being starved and the International Red Cross wasn't even allowed to visit them. So what kind of leverage can you have in a terrorist organization other than trying to rid it of its oxygen, so to speak? This wasn't against the Palestinian people. This was a way to try to get Hamas to cave. Now, we did see in November that part of that leverage worked. Our military pressure worked because Hamas did agree to a deal. And in those phases, it did release a bunch of hostages. Of course, by the third phase of the deal, it said, "Oh, we don't know where they are, and they didn't submit a list," and then they launched more rockets into Israel. So that ended that deal. But the point was that Israel was making a deal and was releasing prisoners. And may I say that prisoners we released in November are already reoffending, which is not news. That always happens. I'd like to remind everybody that the deal that enabled Sinwar to take over in Gaza, the mastermind of October 7th, he was released in a prisoner swap for one Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit. And he, not only that, but he had a brain tumor during his time in Israeli jail, and he and an Israeli doctor saved his life. Then he was released, and then so the point is, even though we're willing to do things that totally endanger us, and yet Hamas is not having any of it because Hamas wants to win, wants to pay no price for that dreadful massacre and abduction of so many people.
Yeah, Ruthie, you mentioned a great point, and I think that's the thing a lot of people are concerned about. Let's say the ceasefire deal happens. That does not mean that Hamas will necessarily uphold their end. If we look back to the initial, if you want to call it a ceasefire, when the fighting was supposed to stop, when the people who were in the Israeli jail, those Palestinian militants, when they were released, there was fighting happening during that time that was not upheld. So to think that if a ceasefire happens, if the fighting will no longer happen, some are saying that is not the smartest thing to think. On top of that, you have other terroristic organizations such as Hezbollah, the Yemen Houthi rebels, and there's even concern that Hamas could be aiding them.
Yes, well, absolutely, because you see, this is all based in Iran. These are all Iranian proxies you've mentioned. And by the way, Iran, that's the way Iran negotiates. I mean, think of it. When President Obama signed, the nuclear deal with Iran, Iran didn't uphold it for 5 minutes, not any single clause of it. And it has been rushing ahead with its nuclear program. That's the trouble with when you have a democracy negotiating with, with terrorists and with the greatest state sponsor of terrorism. It's not an even playing field, right? So, and we in the West uphold our bargains. But when you bargain with the devil, it's problematic, as we've seen repeatedly.
Ruthie Blum, always a pleasure to speak with you. Your expertise and perspective, thoroughly appreciated this Monday morning. I want to ask you, where do we look ahead to? I know you've been speaking closely with Netanyahu. Do you happen to know where his focal point is at this time? Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
Yes, well, I haven't spoken to him in months. And I have no inside information other than, I speak to people who work with him. I have no inside information, but what I do know for certain is that we are in a situation now where we have to figure out, on the one hand, how to battle Hezbollah in the north in order to return all the hundreds of thousands of Israelis who are, or not hundreds of thousands, excuse me, close to 100,000 Israelis who are evacuated from their homes in northern Israel. We have to figure out how to get the hostages home and fight Hamas. Meanwhile, as you said, you pointed out the Houthis from Yemen. And then we had a terrorist attack from Jordan yesterday in which 3 Israelis were killed. There's a multi-front war guided by Iran against us right now. So that Netanyahu is trying very hard to juggle all of these fronts and do so without antagonizing Washington.
Ruthie, thank you so much for joining us bright and early this Monday morning. I enjoyed the conversation with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Jeanne.
Thank you.